Hello, everybody. Welcome to Appreciating Poetry with Dr. Kelly. I'm your host, Greg Kelly, known as DK in the show business and Dr. Kelly in the schoolhouse. I have a infinite series of these meetings planned. In fact, I'll give you a super fast preview. So I've planned weekly meetings through August. And I was just about to inscribe meeting number 20 when I was called away. You can see this recording on YouTube, but don't search YouTube. Just go to appreciatingpoetry4.wordpress.com. For what, I hear you cry? Well, WordPress, put the 4 in there because when you do WordPress for free, they give you an ugly URL. So it's appreciating4.wordpress.com. I am going to attempt to upload videos to Appreciating Poetry for the day of, the night of my making them, certainly within 24 hours. Okay, so we've got two terms that we're going to be exploring over the next weeks and months. One is the verb to appreciate, and the other is the noun poetry. So to get you started on understanding what appreciation means, I've nailed 10 theses to the internet, 85 fewer than Martin Luther nailed on the church door. And you can find these at appreciatingpoetry4.wordpress.com. So I wrote 10 little chunks called Value, a brief introduction to moral realism. Now, this is not a series about morality, except that anything we do has a moral value. There are, in fact, moral facts in the world. And so part of doing the right thing, part of understanding and acting according to our moral constitution is understanding what it is to appreciate something. Now, we have in our audience this evening someone who has helped me over the years to understand, in fact, two people that have helped me a lot over the years to understand what appreciation is. And we're not going to go too deeply into it tonight because we're going to try to jump into poetry as soon as possible. But is there anyone in the assembled multitude who would like to take a stab at defining the word appreciate?
Nope.
Well, sir,
let's see. Appreciating is an attitude, and
Yeah.
it's the appropriate attitude we take towards something. I don't know.
It's an appropriate attitude we take towards something.
Like some things, so the idea is like some things call for certain kinds of attitudes.
Mm.
Appreciating is having the right attitude towards the thing.
Okay, so it's super hard to define a word by itself. I think everything you just said is true. So let me try to give you a little more context to work with. Okay, so we're having Thanksgiving dinner, and I say to you, please pass the potatoes, and you pass the potatoes, and I say, I appreciate it. Am I using the word correctly when I say that?
So I don't know. It's a good question. I would say thank you might be a better uh response, but
Haven't we heard the word appreciate as kind of a synonym for thank you?
well, I think I appreciate it and thank you might be synonyms. If that's what you're saying, then maybe, yeah.
Yeah, now as a teacher of English, I have to point out that no two words are exactly identical, no two terms. So there's really no such thing as an exact pair of synonyms. However, in ordinary usage, we do sometimes use thank you and I appreciate it uh, uh, similarly, right? And it's probably true that I appreciate it is a little gushier, a little more attitudinal, may I say, than the more or less formal thank you. Okay. So one thing we can definitely say is that I approve of the potatoes. That's why I ask for them. And I approve of your passing them. And when I say I appreciate it, I'm expressing that approval, aren't I? Not vigorously. Yes, that's good. Thank you. So I think it's an appropriate attitude, and it's an attitude of thankfulness in some contexts. More generally, it's an attitude of approval, that this is something I approve of. And so if we're having a series of discussions about appreciating poetry, we're starting at the outset with the assumption that we approve of poetry. And so if we're going to learn how to appreciate poetry, that means that we're going to discover what there is in poetry that we might approve of. I think that's about all I want to say about appreciation this time, but I promise you we're going to come back to it from time to time. And so broadly speaking, what sorts of things do we approve of? And I think it might have been Aristotle, because everything comes in threes with Aristotle, but maybe it was some other Greek, who said that what we approve of generally is the true or the good or the beautiful. And those three things obviously overlap a lot. So now, to the extent that poetry is made out of words, we can say that poetry may or may not refer to things that are true. Now, the good is not only the moral good, but it could also be, that one poem is good, another poem is not so good. And finally, there's beauty, which we find in nature and also in art. Poetry is art. So I think we have reason to expect that we might be able to discover the beautiful in poetry. What that is to discover. All right. So you did a great job with the verb to appreciate. So I laugh, enjoy. So does anybody want to take a stab at telling me what poetry is? I'll show you some. Here's some poetry. Can you tell from across the room that this is poetry? Yes, you can. How can you tell?
I can tell because the words don't go all the way to the end of the page.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Now, this is really old. This comes from the 16th century, probably earlier than that. And so you can definitely tell that the words don't go all the way to the right side of the page, and that's conventionally how we do poetry. Follow-up question, Dr. Thibodeau. Why do you suppose we set it up that way?
The first thought that comes to mind has something to do with meter and rhyme.
Absolutely. That's a good thought. Meter is, in English, the pattern of stressed syllables. Other languages have other metrical principles, but in the first line here, we've got in Scarlet Town where I was born. I'm overemphasizing the stress, right? So you got to stress here and here and here and here. But the second line has only 3 stresses. There was a fair maid dwelling. So, and the whole poem goes like that you've got one line with 4 stresses, followed by a line with only 3 stresses. And then you mentioned rhyme. Now notice the first line doesn't rhyme with anything. The second line comes close to rhyming with the 4th line. And this is the way it is through the whole thing. Now, this one, it happens, the first line rhymes with the 3rd line. And again, the second line rhymes with the 4th. But everywhere else in the poem, the first line doesn't rhyme with the 3rd line, but the second line always rhymes with the 4th line. So yeah, the reason why we set up poetry like this in typography is that poetry typically, conventionally, kind of in olden days, had conventional meters and rhymes. So a poem with this 4 stress followed by 3 stress pattern with the rhyme scheme nothing A, was called a ballad stanza because lots of old ballads had this form. All right. So notice that one of the first things we can see and appreciate in poetry is the sound of it. And it makes a lot of sense to me to think we can talk about the sound of it. We can talk about the effect of rhyming the every second and 4th line. And then we can kind of expand it because sounds don't really mean anything by themselves. And we can talk about individual words. So we could say, why do you suppose it had to be in Scarlet Town? Why couldn't it be in Clarkston Town or I don't know, name a 2-syllable town? Why do you suppose it had to be Scarlet? Oh, let's not always see the same hands.
Because red has symbolic meanings.
Oh, nice. So follow-up question. Whenever you give me an answer I like, I always reward you with a follow-up question. What does red symbolize?
It depends on your culture and your gender.
Great. So In Scarlet Town, there where I was born, there was a fair maid dwelling, made every youth cry well a day, and her name was Barbara Allen. So why do you think it had to be in Scarlet Town? Okay, hold on to that. I'm gonna sing. I promise you, this is the only time in this whole course that I'm gonna sing. But I have a little thesis here, you see? Poetry began as song. That's why when we begin thinking about poetry, we start with sound. And from sound, we can move up to words. And from words, we can move up to sentences. And from sentences, we can move up to images, things we picture in our mind. And from images, we can move up to things like metaphors. So historically, as well as in the development of our understanding of it, poetry began as song. And so I'm going to sing. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance, but I'm going to sing the music that goes along with this poem. And by the way, one reason why we remember this, like, what's 16th from 21st, 500-year-old song, is because it's a song. And if you want to remember something, make a song out of it, like the alphabet song or whatever. All right. Scarlet Town, where I was born, there was a very dwelling. From the day, every name was born. Was in the man, when young Jimmy grow on his deathbed lay, on the Lord of Brianna. Then slowly, slowly drew she round. Then slowly drew she round. Said, Alan, Jimmy grow. Young man, I think I'm dying. Oh, mother, mother, made my bed. Oh, make it something else. My love has died for me today. But I still die tomorrow. Oh, Father, Father, dig my grave. Oh, dear, it's so very low. My love has died for me today. And I should die tomorrow. Hey, Miss Scarlett, tell me about the merry month of May when green buds they were swelling. Red has a symbolic value, doesn't it? And green also has a symbolic value. In this context, she's left the room.
I'm here, but
Oh, you're here.
I came to this reading. Okay, since you're recording this, we'll talk about it later.
Okay. Well, does anybody else in the group want to talk about green buds? Or talk about swelling?
Well, it's suggestive of new life.
There you go. And where does new life come from?
The netherworld. I don't.
Well, new life for plants and animals. I mean, it's sexual reproduction, right? Now, And I think scarlet, for mammals has kind of a similar symbolic value to green for plants. So it's the merry month of May. And, it's, I don't make any secret of the fact that this song comes from Britain, which is way up north. And so all the leaves, all the green is gone in wintertime, but in the merry month of May, new life comes out. And so a young man's fancy turns to thoughts of love, right? Well, that's what they say in story and song. What do you mean? What do you suppose it means that every youth cried well a day?
I was hoping you would explain.
Well, I don't know exactly, but it sounds kind of like golly gosh or something. Oh my goodness, or even oye como va or something like that. Like well, a day. So she's attractive, I think.
Hmm.
Now, or maybe woe is me. Oh, I'm sad. Why would I be sad? Because Barbara Allen makes guys sad.
So this is a question I have. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Cry can mean yell,
Yeah.
but it could also mean produce tears. And
Not a little bit less, I think.
okay, but well a day could be an adverb.
Um, could be. I doubt it. It sounds to me like an interjection, like golly. Now, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And so this is part of the game. It's like what would make sense. And so I don't know. Same thing with scarlet, I mean, red is the color of blood, and blood can mean life or it can mean death. So here's a thing. My love has died for me today. What do you think of that? Do people die of love?
Do people die of love?
Yeah. I mean, in the song, okay. So weirdly, this is a first person narrative, and the singer of the song is neither Barbara Allen nor Jimmy Grove. Right. And so because I refer to Barbara Allen and Jimmy Grove in the third person. But here somebody says, oh, mother, mother, make my bed, I'll make it soft and narrow. My love has died for me today, and I shall die tomorrow. So who do you think dies first? Jimmy Grove or Barbara Allen? In other words, who's talking here?
Well, so the only thing we get is Barbara Allen said this to Jimmy Grove, so it could be Barbara Allen
I
talking.
think you're dying. So she starts talking right here.
Yeah, and why think that she stops?
I don't necessarily. So that would answer the question.
Yeah.
Right? That she witnessed the death of Jimmy Grove. She goes home and says, mother, make my bed. Man, this kind of knocks me out just between friends. Mother, mother, make my bed, make it soft and narrow. My love has died for me today, and I shall die tomorrow. And then, Father, Father, dig my grave. the gender deployment there is really interesting to me. That my mother, Barbara Allen's mother, is in charge of making the bed, and her father, working outside with a shovel, is in charge of digging the grave. So Barbara Allen predicts her death tomorrow, and recalls Jimmy Grove's death today. So right after she says this, apparently he dies, right? Right in this blank space. So what do you think, Jason? Do people die of love?
Do they die of love sickness? Do they
Well,
die?
I mean, she says, my love has died for me today.
Yes. My love, which could be the person she loves.
Most likely it's that, yes.
And if that's the case, then that would be Jimmy Grove, maybe.
Yeah,
But Jimmy Grove died for the love of Barbara Allen. That's what we know about him.
yes, yes. That's right. Well, he lay on his deathbed for the love of Barbara Allen. So what does that mean?
Well, okay, so I originally thought that he was dying because of the love of Barbara Allen. Or my original thought was, well, he's love struck and he's sick with love and he's dying because of his love for Barbara Allen.
And his unrequited love for
His
Barbara.
unrequited love, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So she didn't respond.
Right.
And so now I think we get to it, because I think it's quite unlikely that people die of unrequited love. I mean, I don't know. I don't know of anybody in the 21st century who's died of unrequited love. They might commit suicide. You know, maybe that's what's happening. But I don't think I was spurned, I was rejected, and I'm just gonna die. That seems a bit of an exaggeration. So this leads me to believe that it's not really talking about, medical practice or something. It's talking about feelings. So how does Barbara Allen feel when she says, my love has died for me today and I shall die tomorrow?
How does she feel?
Yeah, let me back up.
Despondent.
She feels she's bummed out.
Yes.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by this line, young man, I think you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that sound cold? She doesn't say, like it's like she's telling him, she's notifying him, young man, I think you're dying.
Yep.
Seems rather cold, you know. But then she says, I'm gonna die too. And he died for love of her. Doesn't it make sense that she's gonna die for love of him? And so it seems to me that that I don't know. It's like you want to approach it, or I want to approach it as a puzzle to be solved. But see, I think the crucial point is that people dying for love is a bit of an exaggeration. And so what is it exaggerating? Well, they never hooked up. And the reason they didn't was that Jimmy Grove made overtures and Barbara Allen didn't respond to those overtures. And it's only after he's no longer available that she feels regret that she didn't respond to his overtures. So I just think this is a great poem. And I'm not, when I say appreciating poetry, what I'm really trying to do is to get it from the inside out. In other words, instead of imposing a lot of external factors on it, all of which I'm going to touch upon at one time or another, what I want to do is just try to understand the poem from the inside out and answer questions like, why does it have to be Scarlet Town? Why couldn't it be like Fuchsia Town or something? Okay, I'm gonna read another poem.
Well,
I'm
can I
not
ask a
gonna,
question?
please.
Okay, so if we go back up to where this is probably getting ridiculous.
No, it's not. I could do this all day.
Okay, so said Barbara Allen to Jimmy Grove, young man, I think you're dying.
Yes.
If we think she's continuing to talk, and Jimmy Grove is dead, she's not talking to Jimmy Grove anymore.
No, she's talking to her mother now and then her father.
But why not think there's just a new speaker coming in? Like, because
Well,
there,
who would it be? It can't be Jimmy Grove. It could be me.
yes, it's the speaker, the one who was talking originally. Yeah.
You know, that doesn't seem very plausible because we have no indication that the only person who has died is Jimmy Grove. So was I, the singer, in love with Jimmy Grove? It's possible, but it doesn't seem very likely. The likelier explanation is that, okay, I'm here, I'm playing the guitar, and now I'm going to tell you a story. You know, I hope it isn't too sad and blue. I promise you it won't be gory. You know, uh, what seems extremely likely to me is that in Scarlet Town, where I was born, and I was a youth, and I cried well a day for Barbara Allen. So I know how Jimmy Grove feels. That's, I mean, and I can't be too precise. We just have to allow for the fact that this is not sworn testimony. You know, this is kind of a thing that happened, and isn't it sad? But, you know, no poem ever says there was these people and they were sad. It gives us a dramatic situation, right? How about this? Slowly, slowly drew she round, and slowly drew she nigh him. You know, she wasn't in a big hurry to get there. Okay, I'm dying to go to this next poem. By the way, here's one from the 14th century, and it's all a bletteth after lom, looked after Calvacu, bullock started and bucket farted. That means farts. Maria sing cuckoo. All right. So here's the one that I have on here's the one that I have on the syllabus. The slumber did my spirit seal. We only got 3 minutes to talk about it. So we won't. What I will say is that she, like Jimmy Grove, dies in the blank space between stanzas, between what we call verses. Right? A slumber did my spirit seal. I had no human fears. Could be sung, a slumber did my spirit seal. I had no human fears. Now, this poem's harder to write than Barbara Allen because the first and third lines rhyme, as well as the second and the fourth. Fourth rhymes with course, and C's rhymes with trees. So more rhymes is harder to do, especially in English. On the other hand, this poem only has 2 stanzas, and out of Barbara Allen, I could only remember 5 of them, and there's got to be 20. Because it was made up, It's older than the 16th century. Somebody wrote it down in the 16th century. And of course, when a song's been around that long, they just add verse after verse after verse. All right. So she seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly years. And then she was dead. And no motion has she now, no force. So her death is physical, right? She doesn't have motion. She doesn't have force. It's like physics. She neither hears nor sees. And it seems to me that that's science is about observing things like motion and force. And the way we observe things is with our ears and our eyes mostly. And she's rolled around an Earth's diurnal course, which again is very scientific language. So she's rotating with the Earth on a daily basis, is what diurnal means, with rocks and stones and trees. So I think this poem expresses a very similar feeling of regret to Barbara Allen, that while she was alive, I thought she was a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly years. And when she died, I found out she was more than just, she wasn't really some immortal thing. She was a person. And now I feel regret, although it doesn't say I'm going to die for her, but it says I had no human fears in the past. So that implies that now I have sort of retrospective fears, or I realize now that I had something to fear, namely that she would die. Okay, so our first lesson in appreciating poetry is to appreciate the fact that poetry began as song and well into modern times, as modern as 1799. I know that doesn't sound very modern, but you know, there were steam engines in 1799. So as recently as 1799, a poet was using the exact same devices of sound that characterize this poem from really from the late Middle Ages. And that's all the time I have for now. Please come back next time, and we're going to talk more about sound and talk a little bit more about words and sentences and images and figures of speech. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.